If you can address one thing, and every time a different sensation comes up where you feel negative emotion, you feel bad, and you can say, I understand that this has just triggered this core fear, this core issue, then you don't have to see every single situation as its own problem, which can be so overwhelming. You can instead see every situation as bringing you to your core fear. And when you are aware of that core fear, you are in a totally different place of emotional health, because when situations come up, you say to yourself, wow, that's definitely triggering that fear. And I recognized this for myself during the years, about 10 years ago already, when I was still working through dealing with finishing up homeschooling my kids and beginning that midlife time where I think we all have a consciousness shift. I really think that while people say, you are having a midlife crisis, I really think it's maybe a time when we're just expanding our awareness and we're starting to ask ourselves, hey, wait a minute now. We're looking at life and we're trying to sort through it to find some sense of cohesiveness, even though we might be able to handle all of the things in life, our job, our kids, our relationships, and yet we're looking for maybe some more meaning. That's what it was for me, at least. And I came across this book called Fearless Living. See how worn it is? It has my, let's see, there you go. You can see some right there. My writing of my thoughts as I went through this book. Now, Ms. Britton writes about this cycle that we go through, and she doesn't talk about it as feelings and interpretation specifically as I'm trying to do in this video today, but she talks about the cycle as the trigger, the fear response, the negative feeling, and the self-destructive behavior. And she points out that we can go around and around in this particular cycle, and it doesn't have to be self-destructive in a bad way. In my experience, my particular core trigger, the fear that would start things, would be if I felt rejected. I would definitely have that fear response. That's the sensation, that I've been talking about. And then it went to a negative feeling. And she helps you by asking pointed questions with fill in the blank sections. She helps you to recognize what might be your negative feeling. And she points out that those negative feelings are going to be things like, I'm not good enough. I'm a failure. I'm unlovable. I feel like a disappointment. I must be worthless. I feel helpless or foolish and inadequate, insignificant, or an outcast or damaged goods. So she brings it down to a core set of feelings that it triggers for us. And this is where the interpretation aspect of what I'm talking about comes in. We have the trigger of fear, and it turns into an interpretation of one of those things. I must be a failure. I must be a disappointment. And I, in my own experience, have brought it back to an original wound, an original sensation that I must have felt very, very early on when I didn't understand. And I think it has something to do personally with my father. He was a very doting father. We always had a close relationship, but I'm sure as time went by and he had to get busy and focus on work and provide for the family, I must have felt a sense of separation. And I think that that's what triggered for me that early interpretation that I was being rejected. And so while the cycle that Ms. Britton talks about, that you get this, you have this trigger, which is based on your core fear, and it turns into the fear response, which then gives you that negative feeling. If your fear response doesn't work, and for me, my fear response was do more, try harder, be really good. Then the negative feeling will settle in. And whatever that negative feeling for us is our interpretation. It is false. And yet it's so great to become aware of it, to do the self-awareness work. And that's why I love this book so much. It walked me through aspects that I wasn't aware of in such a great way that helped me to find the clarity that I didn't know I needed about my feelings and about what I was doing in interpreting those feelings. And then just knowing that, I was able to find myself in situations that triggered the same kind of core fear and wanted me to go back on that cycle. But I was able to see it as, hey, look at that. It's happening. And recognizing myself, I don't need to do more or be better because those were fear-based reactions or responses. And I could be a little more calm about how I decided if I chose to do more or be better. It wasn't as a way to avoid that negative feeling and to, stay in that cycle. And so there's always going to be a false interpretation of our feelings if we notice that our feelings are on that negative aspect. Now, I don't mean that, if we're feeling sad because someone's been hurt, that's a false interpretation. That's different. But whenever we're feeling the sensations that we have, which turn into those kinds of interpretations about our value, then yes, we should be much more alert. And if we're working on our emotional health, then we should find the resources that help us to be getting a more general sense and distilling the essence of what we're dealing with so that we don't think that it's so many different issues. We see the core theme that underlies it all, and we can be settled with addressing that. And as I'm always going to say, mind, heart, and spirit at that point should come together to address that. There were aspects of pain that I had in relation to that core sensation, the core interpretation I must have had early on that I couldn't go back and deal with. I had to come to a place, and I did that in my own way with bringing to spirit my grief, because it's like going back to your inner child and being with that inner child who really, I felt the grief at the time of the original sensation of feeling rejected, even though that wasn't true about myself. And so I did a lot of acknowledging and what I call confessing what the pain was, so that I could then invite in relief. And my experience is when we crack open the shell that we've built around ourselves, that's really an opportunity for so much healing to enter and for us to feel a little bit more whole again. Because as I talked about in the judgment of feelings in video number 2, unless we stop judging our feelings, we will definitely feel separated. The mind, heart, and spirit will not have that sense of cohesiveness. And in true fulfillment, the whole is what we are seeking to cultivate. And so it's definitely focusing our efforts on understanding ourselves and using the mind, using the resources we have to directly, willingly come to our feelings, which is heart. And then it's also including spirit for bringing it all together. That's how it was for me. It was a really valuable experience to find the Fearless Living book, to gain the awareness that I didn't know I needed. And then I took from that, it's then close the book and then it's work through these things and apply them in your life on a regular basis and build the practice of being a more alert and aware participant, so that you can have a more steady emotional health and you can see things for what they are because you understand yourself. Emotional health definitely requires emotional intelligence that comes with maturing into a better understanding of what we're really dealing with, and not thinking we have to have many different labels, but looking for the core thing so that we can simplify. Always, I'm interested in simplifying and bringing it to that place of finding the essence of what's really going on. So I hope that this gives you some food for thought. I wish you well, and I hope you take care. I'll talk to you again soon.